Well, hello everybody, and welcome to the 252nd edition of the Boxing Asylum Nuthouse podcast. I'm your host, Steve Wellings, and joining me this evening so far, we have Ozzy, Gabe, and Donny. It might be quite a short show this evening, guys, but that suits me just well. So I'm a little bit on the tired side after all my exertions last night in Belfast at the SSE Arena, as it's now known, formerly the Odyssey. Carl Frampton returns, Frampton reborn. A few people not too enthralled by Carl's performance, maybe saying that he didn't look great, but I think this was just the fight that he needed. He hadn't fought since January. Obviously, with the shower incident in July, the Gutierrez fight didn't come off, so he had a lot of cobwebs to get rid of, a lot of ring rust to shed, and I think he did that against Horacio Garcia, an opponent that Carl said that he picked himself, and this was just the perfect foil, really. For the first 4 or 5 rounds, I thought Carl looked excellent. He was getting the jab going, the left hook was snapping Garcia's head back, but as the fight went on, Garcia was coming back into it, I thought, and he scored a knockout in the 7th round as well, or a knockdown, in fact. Bit of a left hook landed, but I thought Carl slipped on some water, and Victor Lachlan countered it, which I suppose he's entitled to. In the end, 10-round points decision by 3 or 4 points on the different judges' scorecards. Ozzy, just coming to you first, actually. Where do you sit in the camp? Do you think Carl just shedded the rust as was expected, or were you a little bit disappointed like some of the people on Twitter?
No, I wasn't disappointed. I actually quite enjoyed the fight, to be honest. I think Garcia was a lot better than expected. But in hindsight, it's not surprising when you have Canelo flying over, because he's not flying over for any reason. So he obviously rates this guy, and he obviously has a bit of ability. And I think he showed that last night. Carl Frampton admitted himself he's had a torrid year, probably one to forget, to be honest. And this was about getting in with a new team, new promoter. It says, like I said, he had the faff of the shower incident with his other opponent. I thought he did some really good stuff. Other times, some not so good stuff, but he's only human. He will make mistakes, and he admitted himself after the fight he was trying new things out. And if you're going to make the mistakes, these are the fights to do it in. Because then when you make the step up to the next level against your Santa Cruz, your Selbys, Valdez, you could get punished for these mistakes. So all in all, I quite enjoyed it. I thought he looked good. He seemed to tire towards the end of it, but you don't know if he was trying to. He put a bit too much into it, trying to get that stoppage which he spoke about so quite often in the build up to the fight. But no, it was a solid enough performance. I think it's easy to criticise people, isn't it? And sometimes I think everybody is too easy to jump on the bandwagon that he's over the hill, or he's not good enough, or it was a poor performance, when realistically it wasn't that bad of a performance, because if it was really bad, he'd have lost, and that would have been a disaster for him. But no, solid enough win, and he can look to build on it, keep busy. He gets Christmas off, and then I think looking at getting him out back end of March, early April, so ahead of the big one in the summer at Windsor Park.
Yeah, Donny, I think Ozzy's right there when he sums it up as a solid performance. I think it was a solid performance. Carl himself said afterwards in the post-fight press conference that he called his performance mediocre. I don't think it was mediocre. I think he got the job done, and he did what he needed to do. Richie Woodall on BT Sport, Donny, had the fight a draw, I think, or towards the end. Now, you're from a famous judging family yourself. How did you have it scored, Donny?
Actually, I had it all square up until the final round. So on my card, Frampton needed to win that 10th round, but he came out and did it, and I think he unequivocally did. You might say that Carl Frampton comes alive in the 10th round, but pun intended.
Very good.
But yeah, no, I thought that I mean, honestly, he clearly was rusty, but also I think credit should be given to Garcia, who really came to fight and had a tremendous engine on him, and really came there to win. He was no opponent that was brought over just for the payday. He was there with one thing on his mind, and that was to beat Carl Frampton, and he never stopped coming forward. He was also seemed quite big for the weight, and that seemed to he seemed to have that advantage over Frampton. And he didn't stop turning along, and I thought that he really put up a great fight, and I think his stock should also go up in a loss. I'd love to see him come back over the ocean and fight on British shores again. I'd also love to see a rematch of that fight at some point if the two of them continue to advance in their careers.
A Garcia Frampton rematch, you mean, Donny?
Yeah, I mean, I thought that, Frampton might not, fancy that rematch, and, it may not make a lot of sense for him unless maybe Garcia was to get into title contention. But I do think I thought it was a great fight, and like Frampton said himself, he's like, he goes, the fans really loved this fight. He's like, I didn't like it so much, it was a little bit tougher than what he bargained for. He also made the joke that he goes, well, I was involved in picking this opponent. I'll let my team pick the next one. So he knew he had been in a real fight. So yeah, I mean, I thought it was a great contest. I wouldn't mind seeing it again. I don't think that politically speaking and business wise is likely to happen, but if we could see it again, I would. I thought I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah, Frank Warren said afterwards that he wanted an easier opponent, but Frampton insisted on Horacio Garcia. I know that Gabe is still watching the fight, so Gabe, while you're still getting through it, we have a guest on the line, Tom Farrell. Tom, how you sounding?
Good, mate. How are you? All right?
Yeah, not too bad. Thanks for joining us. We're just talking a bit of Frampton Garcia. I'm assuming you saw the fight. What did you make of it, Tom?
Yeah, I watched it. I thought obviously Carl Frampton started very well. Looked sharp. And then, I think he did fade a little bit, but I think it was probably to be expected, especially with having so long out the ring. And yeah, the Mexican was very tough and he's very durable.
Yeah, they're talking about maybe getting Carl out again in Belfast around March time before the big one in the summer, which we expect, Tom, will be the winner of Lee Selby versus Josh Warrington. Who do you see winning out of Warrington and Selby?
I think Lee Selby is a bit too clever. I like Josh Warrington. He's got a good work rate and good engine on him. But yeah, I think Selby's got he's got something a little bit special about him. He's a little bit slick and clever. So yeah, I probably expect Selby to come through that.
Yeah, some of our listeners might know that you're a professional boxer yourself, Tom. 14 fights, 13-1 at the moment, age 27. And they might have seen you recently fighting against O'Hara Davis. Obviously, it wasn't your night, unfortunately. You went down a few times, but you kept getting back up again. Just talk us through the fight between you and Davis from your perspective.
Yeah, do you know what? I think just one of them nights, got caught by a big puncher. Probably a little switch off in the early rounds and probably let the occasion get to me a little bit. I think I was trying to take it in a little bit more than I should, and thought I need to enjoy this because it's such a big night. But I think I just took my eye off and little switch off, and he's caught me early on. I don't think he done anything spectacular. I think the shot he hit me with in the first round was good. It was a good shot, and obviously it lasted in the fight. Then I was always struggling to get me bearings back, and I was fighting on instinct in the end. So I think, as I said, I kept getting up. I always would do that. You'll fight to the end, as I said in a previous interview. But yeah, it's just one of them nights. I'm not dwelling on it. It's not eating away at me. I'm good to the got beat, obviously, but I think it's a learning curve, and I already feel like I've learned a lesson from that, and looking forward to get back in and putting it right.
Yeah, obviously, you can't really have regrets from taking a fight like that, can you? Because, you've got a chance on a big Sky show and a Matchroom bill to get your name out there. If you turn down these opportunities, they might not come again. So you can't really regret the situation, even though you were beaten by O'Hara.
Yeah, that's it. Like, I've got no regrets, It got put on us. Steve Wood thought it might have been a little bit early for me, but, I took it with both hands, and I think if it weren't for that shot in the early rounds, it would have been a different night, and I wouldn't be worried about fighting him again. I'd take the opportunity further down the line if it comes to it, and there's like titles on the line again. But yeah, I think it's, as I said, it's a learning curve. I'd only had 13 fights at the time, so still quite a novice pro. But I think I've come quite far in them 13 fights, and I think it'll stand me in good stead. Although they get beaten, I did could take a few knockdowns. It'll do me well in the future.
You mentioned Steve Wood there. Steve's obviously an experienced manager who puts his own shows on as well. I'm sure he's gone through what he's going to be doing with you next. What's the plan?
Yeah, I was looking to get out at the end of February. I'm not too sure whether it's going to be a Steve Wood show, or I'm still waiting to find out whether it's going to be a VIP show in the auditorium, which is next door to the Echo Arena in Liverpool. Or I don't know whether Sky might be coming back to Liverpool, so I don't think Eddie might be looking to have me on one of their shows again. But yeah, it's still up in the air at the minute, but I'm just aiming for the end of February. That's the sort of date I've got in mind, and I've been taking over in the gym anyway. Got pretty much right back in there, so yeah, I'm just aiming towards that now.
Just looking down your record there, actually, Tom, you got wins over the sort of usual suspects, the journeymen, and then your first big step up was in 2016 against 13-1 Kofi Yates. I'm familiar with him myself, and that was a points win. Just talk us through that one.
Yeah, well, me and Kofi, we weren't mates, but we were quite close. We'd sparred before, and we had quite a close relationship, and it got sort of put on us when the Bellew Macabre built got put about, and they wanted to get a good fight on there, like a Liverpool Manchester derby. So yeah, it got sort of put to us, and both sides of us thought we both asked for it. So there's a little bit of needle at first, but yeah, we put that to one side and we got on with it. It was a cracking fight, good solid 10 rounder. It was a big step up for me because I'd only ever done 6 rounds once before that. But it was an educated gamble, and it paid off, and it got me out there. Really, that was the first time people had sort of seen me. It was live on Sky Sports on such a big show, and it was a great fight. But I think both me and Kofi both came out good after that as well, because we put on a great display.
And a good win for you as well was over Tommy Karras. I'm sure that was a good fight because Karras is rarely in a dull fight. People might have seen him box to a draw with Tom Stalker as well beforehand, and you handed him a defeat, and he hasn't fought since. What was it like going in with Tommy?
Yeah, that was even more closer to home than the one with Kofi Yates, because myself and Tom Karras used to spar for years as amateurs and professionals. So we should be quite close, and we still speak quite often now. But yeah, in a way, Tom sort of called me out because he wanted the way back in and wanted the big fight, and he ended up getting the opportunity. So yeah, it was a strange one fighting Tom Karras, but yeah, it was a good fight on the night. I knew we knew each other, what each other was going to bring, and no, it didn't fail to entertain. I think all the crowd loved that one on that night. It was a good fight for me, and again, another chance to display me ability on Sky.
Excellent stuff. Just to remind the listeners, we've got Liverpool professional Tom Farrell on the line with us. Just before we bring in Ozzy and any of the other guys to ask questions, just going to ask you, Tom, there's a lot going on in boxing. It's been a really good year. You've had the likes of Golovkin's been fighting Canelo, even Anthony Joshua. For better or for worse on the opponents, he is packing out arenas. Who's exciting you in the world of boxing at the moment? Who do you look forward to watching?
Yeah, do you know what? I love Golovkin. So that fight against Canelo was great for me. I think I've read something today about them potentially having a rematch on the 5th of May in Vegas. So again, that'll be. I don't like staying up for the ones that are on at like 5 o'clock in the morning these days. Like when they're over in America, it does me head in, because you end up knackered for days. Like I won't stay up for them, but literally that's the one fight lately I've stayed up for. Yeah, it's a great fight. Canelo look great in that fight. And I think you could argue that it looks like Golovkin's starting to age, and he's getting a bit old now. So I don't know whether the wait till May might favour Canelo in the rematch. But yeah, definitely love that one. And the big fight that's coming up for me, I absolutely love Lomachenko. Try and do some of the stuff that he does. But yeah, sometimes he pulls it off quite a bit better. But yeah, I can't leave the fight against Wigan. That'll be a cracking fight, though.
Certainly will be. Ozzy, do you have anything you want to ask Tom?
Yeah, how you doing, Tom? You all right?
Good, mate. You all right?
Yeah, good, sir. So you mentioned you're coming back in aiming for February. Are you looking to get back in straight in with a bigger fight domestically, or is it one of those where you want to go back in with, like, say, a honeymoon of sort, and then look for a bigger fight later down the line?
To be honest, it's just a bit of a waiting game. I don't want to be in crap fights. I want to be in exciting fights, and I think, as you said before, I'm 27. I'm 28 this week, so I don't want to waste no time fighting journeymans and bums, as some people will call them. if you're O'Hara Davis. But yeah, I want to be in good fights. I want to be in exciting fights. But yeah, maybe if my management team think there might be a need just to get me back in there and get me a win, then so be it. But I'll be ready for whatever offers come about, and I'll take them seriously. If there's a big fight there, then I'll take it. I want to be in good fights.
And obviously the O'Hara Davis one defeat was a tough one to take, but do you think moving forward that'll stand you in good stead, and sort you'll learn more from essentially showing that you can take a shot and actually dig in against one of the bigger punchers domestically?
Yeah, I've shown me metal, haven't I? I've shown that when it gets tough, I won't look for a way out, and I'll still be in there fighting. Whereas I don't think I performed to anywhere near my capability. That was just because of that one shot, and just knocked me for 6. But if he's meant to be this absolute devastating punch, but I'm still getting back up. So that's me saving grace from that one. But yeah, I'm looking forward to getting back in there, and I'm not really too fussed on what sort of level opponent is. I just want to be back fighting and get back to winning ways.
Nice one.
Okay, cheers, Ozzy. Yeah, just looking up and down the rankings here at your weight domestically, Tom. There's quite a few names actually. I hadn't realised it's it's quite packed out. You got Robbie Davis Jr.'s knocking about. Lenny Dawes is still on the scene. Jason Easton. Who else? Tyrone McKenna, Glenn Foote. Would you fancy a go with any of these boys if maybe a British title eliminator or a shot at the actual title came available?
Yeah, that's the aim, isn't it? We want to get to that British title. I think probably I'll have to, as you said, I'll have to have an eliminator or something like that to aim my way back up, because I might have slipped down the rankings since my latest defeat. But yeah, Tyrone McKenna's called me out a couple of times. I'm not too sure who else, but yeah, Robbie's my mate, and we've trained together for years, so it's not something that we wouldn't call each other out. But yeah, I'm sure the British public might start asking for it down the line. But yeah, no, as I said, I just want to be in big fights, good entertaining fights, and so if the opportunity comes about where the board say, listen, put this on as an eliminator, then yeah, take it with both hands.
Great stuff. Final question from us, Tom, and we thank you for your time, is from Gabe Lewis, who's on the panel. He says, what is the current thing that you are working on the most or trying to improve on at the moment in the gym?
At the minute, I've been enjoying training without any specific sort of plan or looking for someone in the future or aiming on any specific tactics, but just been tidying up my game as a whole, really. Looking for things that I did wrong, and tightening up my defence in patches. So yeah, probably stuff like that. Yeah, just tightening up my defence. Because I do like to box out of a nice relaxed sort of style. And, sometimes the hands come down and it's more head moving. But yeah, I can box nice and tight. It's just finding the right times and being a bit more switched on at times. So yeah, that's sort of been the aim now. Where we haven't really got a particular aim, I've just been focused on tightening up my defence and coming back with my own sort of aggressive shots. Because at times of can be a bit like trying just box and score. Whereas I did start off trying to be a bit of a puncher and trying to put the pressure on people. So yeah, it's finding the right balance and going back to basics really. Yeah.
Great stuff, Tom. Do you have Twitter or anything you want people to follow you? Or any shout outs?
Yeah, my Twitter is Tom Farrell 89. I think the same on like Instagram as well. So anyone who wants to follow me journey, feel free to come along and have a little look.
Good stuff. Tom Farrell 89 on Twitter and Instagram, everybody. We appreciate you joining us, Tom. Best of luck in the future.
Please, nice one for having me.
Cheers. Thank you.
Yeah, bye now.
Bye. Tom Farrell there. Thanks for Tom for jumping on and for Ozzy for sorting that out. Gabe, how are you getting on with the Frampton fight? What round are you in? Gabe, still watching Frampton?
Sorry, round 9.
What do you reckon so far?
Yeah, I see pretty much what you guys have seen. It's been Carl was the man early. He looked sharp to me. I thought he looked really good. I know last week I came out on I'm not a big Carl Frampton fan. that doesn't change anything for me. But he's sharp early on as the fight keeps progressing. I think he was getting tired. But like Don said, I don't think it was just Frampton being, a little bit shaking a little bit of rust. I think that we have to give his opponent credit too, because he was definitely in the fight. So I think between those two different things, having an opponent that was probably better than Carl thought he was, and then also having, Carl being a little bit rusty, so to speak. I think having those two factors combined made it a little bit better of a fight. I really wasn't looking forward to this one, thinking it was going to be much, but as it is right now at this point, I think that Carl had to have an attempt to pull it out. I think the official scores that I read before I watched the fight were a little bit wide, but it's a pretty good fight. Fair play.
Gabe, just before you jump off, I was sitting next to a fellow reporter last night, a guy called Ron Lewis from the Times, and we were talking about Frampton's next fight, possibly. And he mentioned the name of Gary Russell Jr. I don't know what you think about Russell, but I just take him out of the equations every time. I don't even consider him as a factor because he's so grossly inactive, one fight a year, if that. I just can't take him seriously, Gabe. Am I being a bit harsh? Because I want to see him fight. He's talented, he's fast, he can punch a little bit, but the guy just doesn't fight.
No, I don't think you're being too hard on him at all. I think it's completely absurd that you've got a guy like him who has, so dang much potential. I mean, anybody who looks at Gary Russell and says anything, that he doesn't have skill or anything like that is completely absurd. I mean, the guy is probably, from an intangible standpoint, the things that you can't learn in this, and all those things. He's got everything, you would hope to have if you were a professional fighter, and then he just, squanders it all being inactive. So not a real big fan of that guy just by the way he runs his career, because he has the potential or rather had the potential to be something special. And I don't think anything's going to change at this point in the game for the guy. But, I don't ever consider him either. He's kind of an afterthought. He might as well be retired and just come out of retirement once a year, every year and a half to fight, because it's nonsense. It's completely absurd. But I on the same point that we were talking about a minute ago, how I'm not a Carl Frampton fan. If that were to go down, I'd love to see Carl take the fight and show him what's what, because I think Carl could win that fight. It just depends on what kind of shape Gary Russell comes out in. I mean, here's another thing. He's obviously really a solid fighter, given that as inactive as he is, he still puts on good performances. So imagine what he could have done if he would stay active, if he'd just be a little bit more active. But I would be going for Carl in that fight just because, I don't appreciate the inactivity and basically squandering of the, skills and such that he has. But if it were to happen, it'd probably be a pretty closely contested fight, I think.
Interesting stuff. Gabe's going for Frampton if the two were to ever meet. Just before we go to Donny, in fact, you want to jump in on something?
No, I was just going to say that, I know that a lot of the Heyman fighters, sometimes they seemingly, don't have the ability to get out and fight as frequently as we might like, because Heyman has so many mouths to feed and people are on such high guaranteed money. And there's only a certain amount of TV dates, that are capable of giving the fighters the paydays that he's contractually obligated to pay them. So Russell may be a victim of that. However, though, even early in his career, before Heyman had the huge stable that he had, Gary Russell Jr. is one of Heyman's oldest clients. I think Heyman signed him like in 2008 or something. Even then, the progression of his career was at a snail's pace. I mean, it must be something in his management team or his trainers or whatever it is. But I remember he was ESPN's Prospect of the Year for like 3 years in a row. I mean, that's
it says it all, doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. You want to win once, maybe twice, but if you're winning it like 3 times, it's like time to shit or get off the pot, right? And I mean, although I will say this though, Gary Russell was the one name that Carl Frampton's team around him. They were talking about Selby. They were talking about Warrington. They were talking about a rematch with Santa Cruz, or if Mares beats him, then fighting Mares. But the one person's name that didn't come up was Gary Russell. I think I just thought that was interesting that in the after fight interview that didn't come up. I think that he might be one of the most dangerous fighters out there for Frampton, for the specific reason that I think that the advantage that Carl Frampton brings into the ring against most of his opponents is that he's more athletic than they are, and he uses that athleticism to help him win fights. And I think that Gary Russell Jr. is the one guy in the division who has that edge over him in the very attribute that Frampton usually is always superior to his opponents. He's always more athletic than they are, but Gary Russell Jr. Is even more so, and so he wouldn't bring that advantage to the ring. I think it would test a different side of him.
And Donny, we're in negotiations live at the moment, trying to get Robert Mugabe on the call. Any updates?
Well, apparently he isn't too busy anymore, so he wants to finally call into the asylum. He was, for years busy stealing land from white people, but now that all the fun's over, he said, what the hell, let's talk some Carl Frampton.
Boy, am I sorry I asked him that question. Right, Ozzy, we'll go back to Donny in a minute on Conlan and Cajas. I think before we do so, we've had a couple of questions in, one from Danny Young, but one from Tom Turnbull I'm going to read out to you. A few people interested in our thoughts on this situation. On Jamie Moore as Carl's trainer, Tom says, for tonight, for his career, and so far for the potential for the future, I thought Jamie's advice was good, clear and concise in the corner tonight, but I'm not sold on him long term. I'm not sure where I stand on this one, Ozzy. I just want to give Jamie a chance. He's unproven as a trainer. Obviously, we knew what he did as a fighter, but I don't want to shit on him for the sake of shitting on him, if you know what I mean. I want to wait and see what he does. Carl's obviously picked him for a reason. What do you think?
Yeah, I've got to admit, when it was announced, it was a strange choice. I mean, Carl Frampton, he would have had to pick of the bunch, really. He was, he's well thought of. He's a world-class fighter, and he's selected Jamie Moore. There's obviously a reason between that, and Carl said himself that he feels happy. That the fighter is happy. That he obviously had a lot of problems towards the back end of his time in the McGuigans. He's gone into a new camp. He's enjoying it, and I completely agree with the question that Moore's advice was perfect. Long term, I'm not so sure, but I think everybody would have had the same views when Shane McGuigan trained him, because Shane wasn't a well-known trainer. He was the son of Barry McGuigan, which ultimately helped get him the gig. So I think it's only fair to give Jamie Moore the chance and see what they can do. As Gabe mentioned, Frampton looked really sharp early on, and it's the first time he's looked sharp in a couple of fights now. So it's an interesting one, and I agree with you. I'm not going to slag somebody off for the sake of slagging somebody off. Moore's not had that unbelievable fighter on his as part of his stable. I think he's coached likes of Tommy Coyle. I think he's done a bit with Rocky Fielding while Oliver Harrison's not been there. So I'm all for it. I think it's good. I think it was a bit of a change, but overall, Carl's happy. There's lots to build on. So let's judge him in the long term and not.
Completely agree. Right, Donny, let's get on to the undercard fights. Jerwin and Cajas defending his IBF Super Flyweight title against Jamie Conlan. We pretty much all saw what was going to be coming in this one. Feel so sad for Jamie, obviously known him since he turned pro. I remember him turning pro in 2009 in the same arena on the Rogan Sexton undercard. Got a bad cut that night as well and managed to get past the journeyman. His career's been blighted by cuts, really. And as he's stepped up in levels, he's been knocked down, he's been dropped, he's made a reputation as being this spirited warrior who just keeps getting back up again. And he's had some great fights. Unfortunately, it was just a step too far, as we anticipated last night. And he was getting hit with left hands to the body. In the first round, he got dropped. I don't even know what happened. He didn't seem to get hit by anything. It was a delayed reaction. he's a warrior, isn't he? But he just found out the levels. He's a little bit too great last night, Donna.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're all rooting for him because he is kind of a real tough fighter, and he's been in some Arturo Gatti, style affairs more than once. And so, I mean, but as you said, I mean, it just he found out where his ceiling was last night. I think it's as simple as that. And I know that may seem harsh, especially since if you're a big fan of his, and I do like him, and I've seen several of his fights, and I've seen a couple of the good ones. But I mean, yeah, that's just what happens. But you know what? Respect to him for taking the shot. I mean, he sometimes you even go into the fight knowing that this guy may be a little bit better for you, but you say, you know what, I want the glory of being a champion. This is my dream, and even if it's likely that I'm a bit overmatched here, I'm going to go for it. And that's the type of guy that he is. And especially when you get hurt to the body the way he was, it's very, very difficult. I mean, he kept on getting up. He wanted more, but ultimately he just, I mean, he just couldn't do it and had to be saved. But yeah, I mean, it was he gave it his all, and you know what? If I mean, he has to always be careful because he's the type of person that takes a lot of shots and gives them to. So I mean, sometimes with a fighter like that, they could maybe match himself for a few fights, kind of like revive him and rejuvenate him a little bit. But and eventually they can get him, back up there. But he still has more fighting left in him. It's just it can't. I don't think it'd be at world level.
Well, that's the thing, Donny. He's 31. He's had 19 odd fights, but those rounds that he's been fighting in, you can multiply them like dog years for the mileage. He's been in that many wars.
That's a very good point. Yeah.
Ozzy, just looking at future prospects for Anquias before we talk about Conlan. Actually, at that weight, he's the IBF champion. We've got Khalid Yafai, the WBA champ, Runvezi, WBC, and Inoue up at the WBO. There's a fair few decent matchups to be made. He's obviously had Pacquiao management agreements in the past. I'm not sure if he's still with him. I know Sean Gibbons was in the corner. He looked a bit like the man himself, didn't he? Bit of a smile. Southpaw seemed to be enjoying himself in there.
He was quality, wasn't he? Really, really good. I agree. I thought Conlan was out of his depth, and it doesn't surprise me. You see Conlan going life and death with just bang average people. So for me, that would say, oh yeah, he can avoid. He can make the step up and go and win. Fair play for taking it. It was obviously an opportunity for him. Not sure where he goes now if he wants to drop back down to work his way back up. But I would like to see Anquias fight again in England, and similar to what Frank has done with Zolani Tete, see if there was an option on him to bring him over here, because he's obviously got talent, he can punch, and he's got a little bit about him. Now, I do think he is promoted by Manny Pacquiao, but he always seems to fight on the road anyway, so I don't really know what that... I mean, what it does for him. He's got a promoter, but he never fights at home. He's always on the road. And an interesting one, when he boxed in Australia, he got $4,000 for that, or something like that. It was absolute peanuts. He got 80 grand last night, so I bet he was absolutely buzzing with a huge amount in the jumping purse. But no, I'd like to see him over here again. Definitely, I think he'd destroy Kal Yafai. And I know we've spoke about it over previous weeks, but a World Boxing Super Series at Superfly would be absolutely brilliant. Be a lot of quality operators in there, and it just makes for good fights.
Gabe, I know you went off for a break. Gabe, you back with us? Gabriel. Nope, Gabriel's not back with us. Donny, did you see Tete against Gonya? Gonya in 11 seconds, more like.
Well, I didn't, but it sounds like you just told me the story there. So
Flip me, Donny. You could have seen a clip on Twitter.
Yeah, I could have seen it in a GIF format. Yeah. No, but no, I missed that one. I caught the top two fights on the bill, but not the undercard. I was cleaning out my basement.
No problem. Yeah, Ozzy, the fastest knockout in a world title fight, apparently. They came out, circled each other for a little bit, and Tete just let go with a southpaw lead, right hook, and just bang, knocked him out straight away. He said he wasn't going to take 4 rounds. He barely took 4 seconds. It was bang, and it was over.
Wow. That's the best way to describe it. I don't think anybody would have predicted that. It wasn't the best of opponents, but I think what you've got to remember, this fight was all set for South Africa as a homecoming for Zolani Tete. The funding. So obviously they used it as an opportunity basically to get him out in Belfast because they're chasing the Ryan Burnett fight. There's only so much you can say about the fight itself. It just lasted 7 seconds and he iced him with one punch, the first one he threw. We've seen what Tete can do in previous fights over here. They seem keen for the Burnett fight. Frank's talking about a show with Frampton topping the bill in March, April. That's the date they're talking about, the Burnett fight. So I want to see that. At the moment, there's no other fight for Burnett for me. And Tete, let's see if he can go and unify. I think it'd be a brilliant, brilliant fight, and it's one that I'd pick Tete to win. But I've seen other people saying that Burnett would possibly take the power and then go on and outpoint him. So it's certainly one that I want to see. And fingers crossed, boxing politics and stops them from seeing a genuinely world-class unification.
Yeah, Frank was asked about this at the press conference last night, and he said that he was going to be reaching out to Adam Booth over the coming week to see about trying to make the fight. He wasn't sure about Burnett's contractual agreements with Matchroom, so he was going to go to Booth direct and see if he could thrash it out. I can't see Eddie allowing it to happen on another fighter's show. I think that one would be kiboshed for whatever reason, but I would disagree with you. I think it would be an excellent fight, and I think it would be very close, a hard-fought thing over 12 rounds, but I think Burnett would come out on top. I wouldn't be surprised if Tete beat him, but I think Burnett, he's a talented fighter, but he has a bit of steel, a bit of balls about him, a bit of grit, and he would be able to take Tete's power and make it a tough fight and win. I think, Donny, I'm not going to go to you on this one because Gabe's not back, but did you see any of Paddy Barnes, Donny?
Yeah, no. Aside from Frampton and Conlan on the UK card, and then I saw the American stuff. But that was it, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, that's what I was going to ask you about next. And in that case, the Las Vegas card. Tell me about Julian Williams against Ishe Smith, a fight that I haven't seen actually. Williams being touted in a lot of quarters, and then he came up against Charlo. And I thought Charlo beat him handy, to be honest. Smith knows where to stink the place out, but I believe last night he did a pretty decent job, and some people thought he might have done enough to get the decision. Donny?
I'm sorry, you would cut out there for a second, Steve.
Oh, sorry. Talk to me about Williams against Smith. I was going to say the Las Vegas fight.
Oh, yes. So with that fight, I was really, really disappointed in the scorecards. I thought that they certainly didn't represent what happened in the fight. One of them wasn't the 97-93 that I think was from Reddy, but the ones from Max DeLuca and Hoyle were absolutely disgusting. I mean, they had it 99-91 and 98-92. Now, just for reference, on my card, I had Ishe Smith up. I had him winning by a round, six rounds to 4. Television had it a draw, right? So okay, they did have it a draw. So I mean, but like they just seemingly filled out their scorecards, before the fight even happened, before they even got to the arena, and it was criminal because. Smith is like 39 years old, and this guy's never in exciting fights, right? And he's usually a defense-first fighter who fights on the back foot and tries to, fight like he uses a lot of veteran tricks. He can avoid getting hit a lot, but he usually stinks the place out. And I actually tweeted him last night, and I said, I used to make jokes to people that, sometimes, your fights would put me to sleep, but this is one of the best fights I've ever seen you in, and you gave so much, and he did. I mean, he's 39 years old, and he was out there last night because he wants another shot at a title, He had something to prove, and and he actually was backing up Julian J. Rack Williams for most of the fight. I mean, Williams was having a say and getting in some good counters and stuff, but I mean, really, like Smith was really putting it on him, and he was going to the body like a lot. Apparently, none of those body punches ever got credited. But I mean, I just felt that he put on such an amazing and unexpected performance. And and he was really giving it his all, and he was winning those rounds, and he deserved to have his efforts evaluated with a set of honest eyes, and he wasn't done that justice.
Gabe, you're back with us. Donny was talking Julian Williams fight there, but I believe just to round off the Frampton undercard, you saw a bit of Paddy Barnes against Eliezer Quezada last night. What did you think of Paddy's performance, Gabe?
Yeah, I thought he looked good. He looked sharp. Got the good body shot going, and did what he needed to do against the guy that he should be beating. I thought that he I don't know, that's really too much to say. He did what he needed to do. He looked sharp, and that body punch was ferocious. I mean, that thing, and I think he hit him to the body quite a bit there. So, I think that was a good bit of development for him. I mean, he's fairly young in his career, and so I think that's a good lesson to learn at that point of your career, is that don't neglect the body, because that's really what did it. If he would have been a headhunter, I don't know that he would have as quickly. Possibly at some point he would have, but it was a good fight, a good show by him, and I was impressed with what I saw. So hopefully he'll be able to continue that. And like I said, that body punch was ferocious. I would have hated to be on the end of that one, but looked sharp.
Yeah, Paddy said he's not hanging around. He wants to get to world level sooner rather than later. He's only had 5 fights. I think the fact that his opponent came towards him trying to fight rather than running off was an advantage for Paddy. Quick word on Barnes, Ozzy, and also on John O'Carroll. We were talking off air. He bought the fight to De Santiago, and the televised portion of the card last night, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was pretty good.
Yeah, really, really enjoyed it. And I got to admit, when Garrity pulled out of the Carroll fight due to injury, I thought, oh, here we go. We're going to get just some no-mark coming over, and it's going to be a waste of time. Same with Barnes as well, when he didn't have an opponent announced, well, on BoxRec anyway, a week out. But it was a definite step up for Paddy Barnes, and I wasn't the only one in saying that. I thought, going off previous viewings, I thought this lad, if he's got anything about him, could cause him a lot of problems, but I take that all back, because Barnes was excellent. I think it's the best we've seen him as a professional. And I think it's good for him to get the stoppage as well, because obviously a lot can be made of that, and you can only go so far on skill if you can't keep people off you. And it was a brutal, brutal body shot. Don't think anyone would want to take that. And I wouldn't be shocked to see Paddy Barnes having a world title fight on Frampton at Windsor Park next year. They're not hanging back with him. I think getting that Intercontinental belt will put him into the probably top 10 in the WBO now. We know Frank is pretty nifty when it comes to the WBO. So
plus he had their European title as well, which he had tried to defend last night, but the guy pulled out.
Yeah, so it's one of those now. So to be honest, the Intercontinental is probably a better belt than the European one. It's more prestigious in terms of getting you a higher ranking. So yeah, I won't be shocked to see some sort of fan eliminator, or even just a straight world title shot in the middle of next year. John O'Carroll, really entertaining. He's got skills. It's just a shame he's not got more of a dig. That saying, I thought he did really well last night, and he looked good. He's a big lad for the weight, and he claims he can make featherweight as well. And if it doesn't take too much out of him, he should, because he'd be an absolute monster at that. That saying, there's some good fights to be in with. I'd like to see, obviously, the Garrity rematch early next year. If that isn't the case, then put him in with Marco McCulloch or something like that. Right. And I think it would definitely be an entertaining one, but he's doing okay, John O'Carroll. When he signed with Matchroom, to be honest, it did nothing for his career. He got absolutely nowhere with him. He used to be trained by Packy Collins as well, didn't he? I didn't realise he'd left him, so I'm not sure what went on there. But no, really entertaining, and overall a solid card from Frank. All the TV stuff went down well, and so a lot of people who usually slag him off like to slag Frank off, actually giving him a bit of credit for saying what a good card it was. And you know, it's good when the matchmaker Jason McClory said it's one of the best cards he's matched in terms of like contests and fights producing.
Gabe, you were away when we were talking the Jamie Conlan fight. Do you want to have a quick put your 2 pence worth in there?
You know, I don't have too much to probably add into what you guys have said. You know, I thought he was just overmatched from the start. I know last week on the pod, I believe I said that I thought he could win, and you know, I think if the circumstances were just right, maybe he could. You know, but it was, you know, it was obviously a case where he was overmatched there. If we were to see that fight 10 more times, maybe 1 out of those 10 times, he might take the fight. But, you know, I was impressed, and I did appreciate the fact that he showed some real guts, because he kept getting, you know, kept getting hit to the body, kept getting put down, and you could see that he was really in no condition to continue on. I mean, it was a rough fight for him, you know, tough night, but fair play to the guy. The kid's got cojones of steel for keeping on. I think he would have kept going if the ref hadn't stopped the fight. I mean, you know, somebody needed to stop it. You know, there was no point in any of it continuing, you know, and he was still live. He was still fighting and still carrying on. So I think that was a good thing to see out of him, you know, just being gutty and riding it out as long as he could. And he continued to, you know, he wasn't throwing tons of punches, but he was still throwing. I was really impressed by whenever he was getting banged to the body on the ropes, how he kept throwing that left hook, trying to get it to do some damage. So, you know, fair play to him on that.
Gabe, did you see the Julian Williams-Ishay Smith fight by any chance?
No, sir.
No problem. Just looking down that undercard, actually, there's a few. I love a good few tongue twisters, but there's some fighters here. I don't know if they go any further in their career, whether I'll be able to keep up with them. Oluwafemi Oyoleye is just one of them. But what about this guy? Tugs Tsogot Nyambayar, 8-0, defeated Harmonito De La Torre. That's a featherweight for you, Mr. Nyambayar. Not sure how good he is. Don't know if you saw any of him, Donny. I know you did see the Lionel Thompson Earl Newman fight up at light heavyweight. Any value there, briefly?
Yeah, Lionel Thompson looked quite rejuvenated. I mean, you know, he now I think that he's still a contender at 175. They had mentioned on TV that he was 6-4 in his last 10 fights, whereas Newman was the undefeated prospect coming in. But you know, in that 6-4 in his last 10 fights, that includes guys like Kovalev, right? And other, you know, other top contenders. I mean, I think that was a case of a guy who is a real, you know, who's been around the block and knows his way around the ring and has been in there with top class fighters. And, you know, and this young guy who, though he had an undefeated record, right, you know, really hadn't fought anybody of note, and it showed. He got into trouble early. Thompson invested in the body very well, and he scored a knockdown early when the referee, Robert Byrd, felt that he was being held up by the ropes. That was questionable, but I was actually happy to see it. I think that a lot of times referees don't use that. They jump in and stop fights if guys up against the ropes and they're looking like they're getting hit pretty good. Just call the knockdown. I mean, it kind of functions like a standing 8, but if they're against the ropes, you can use that. And I was glad that he did, because actually Newman fought his way back into the fight. He was still losing, but he was taking some rounds there at the end. It was a clear win for Thompson, but you know, I had him by a couple of rounds, and then plus the points from the knockdown. But I thought that he learned in there, Newman did, and he'll actually come back stronger because of that, because he was in with a veteran fighter last night, and even though he got you nipped at the wire and didn't have enough time in a 10-round fight to come back. I think he definitely learned something about himself in there, and he came back after 2 knockdowns and got off the canvas to fight his way back into contention. So a win that gives Thompson some momentum in his career, maybe gets him back in line for a title eliminator or something like that, and for Newman, an important growing experience.
Thanks, Donny. Just wrapping up the stuff on the weekend then, for anybody who's interested, Thomas Adamek won the vacant International Republic of Poland heavyweight title with a win over Fred Cassie. So good win for Mr. Adamek there. Over on Friday nights, USA Fox Sports 1, Gabe, Anthony Dirrell with a win over Dennis Duglin. I think it was a technical decision. Something went on after 4 rounds. I haven't seen any of the American stuff, so I don't know. I noticed on the undercard, Leon Lawson III was making his debut. If he can punch like Leon Lawson the first, he'll be going places. But tell me about Dirrell against Dennis Duglin, Gabe.
Yeah, it was a pretty rough fight. Definitely not one that I would recommend for people that aren't really interested in maybe either fighter, or who isn't real keen on seeing a fight that really didn't have maybe a whole lot of bearing in terms of what comes next. I mean, I suppose you could say that every fight has some kind of meaning to it, but definitely not one that I'd go above and beyond to try to see if you don't have the time for it. If you got the time, maybe, but it's a really rough fight. Really, a lot of clinching, a lot of really close, just really, really rough stuff kind of fight. I thought Duglin had a lot of good points here and there. Of course, you could say Dirrell did as well, and it was just kind of one of those fights. It was just a dog fight the whole time, and so it really wasn't all that wonderful of a dog fight either. I mean, there was a lot, like I said, a lot of clinching and stuff, and then we had the referee a headbutt, so that's why it went technical decision. Like I said, overall though, probably wouldn't recommend you guys to go out of your way to see it. I mean, definitely, if you are a fan of either guy, you probably want to watch it. But the undercard had a really good fight. A guy that I wasn't familiar with. What was his name? Cowboy. Oh Lord, what was that guy's name?
What weight was it at, Gabe?
Yeah.
You remember what weight it was at?
You know what? It's all slipping me right now.
We've got Ryan Carl. We've got Jamonte Clark.
That's it. Yeah, Carl. That was a good fight. That was a real good fight. So if you were to pick something off that card to watch, I'd go with that one. That was an entertaining fight all the way through and through up until the end. So that would be the fight for me to watch out of that card. There was one other fight on there I didn't really pay too much attention to in between the Carl fight and Dirrell. But
Gabe, that first fight, that Cowboy Carl guy.
Yeah,
the redheaded guy. Yeah, you know what? I've seen him on TV on undercards at a couple of times on Fox Sports 1 type shows, like the small PBC shows. He's not the most talented fighter in the world, but he's entertaining as hell. He's never in a boring fight. The redheaded kid from Texas. He's a big ticket seller, but I don't know, I could see why. He gives fans the value for their money. I like him.
Oh yeah, no doubt about it. Like I said, it was the fight night for me. Was it? It was lightweight, wasn't it?
Yeah. I think he's a lightweight or a junior welter, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Yeah, if you guys are keen on watching a good fight, that would definitely be the one to go for. It was 10 rounds, 8 rounds. It wasn't 12-rounder. And the cards I don't think were particularly close or anything like that. But I mean, lot of action there in that fight. So
yeah,
that would my pick for fighting that there.
No problem. Cheers. Right, rapping Rob Kelly's jumped on the line just before we bring Rob in. Anything outside of Frampton, Aussie? Any of the American stuff or international stuff that took your fancy, or were you like me and didn't manage to catch too much?
I didn't catch anything of the Ishe Smith fight. I'd have to YouTube that. I've just seen a bit of the Douglin Dirrell fight, and the cards were relatively close. I mean, I've watched it a couple of times. I couldn't really work out why it was stopped, but that Douglin's not very good. We've seen Groves beat the shit out of him, so I was quite surprised how much of a scrap he gave Dirrell. But on Ishe Smith, I actually think it would have been a good step up, for someone like Liam Smith. Yeah. Pre-world title. But instead they got him up there. And to be honest, I wouldn't necessarily disagree with seeing that now, or someone of his level. But in terms of everything else, I didn't really.
No problem, Aussie Smith there. It's coming up on 9 o'clock. You're listening to the Nuthouse podcast. Gabe's on the call as well. So is Donny. Rob has joined us. Rob, Frampton getting a win last night. The Jackal's back, baby.
Yeah, I don't know. I think the inactivities obviously played a bit of a part there. But something about Frampton, I don't know if he's carried the power up the weight. He was very crisp puncher when he was operating at a lower weight, and you could see he could take guys out later on in the fight or early in the fight, as he's kind of showed against Kiko and stuff. And I just didn't see the same snap in the punches since he's moved up. Obviously against Santa Cruz, he's fighting against the top operator, but last night he's fighting a guy who's unbackable beforehand. All right, never been stopped, but I don't know. I just don't think he's maybe as strong a featherweight as we thought he was. I think he's probably his best fighting weight is below that. Belfast, massive boxing hub, huge following there, huge night for the supporters. But I don't know. I didn't take away any. Didn't find out anything about Frampton. Maybe it's just a bit of ring rust, but poor performance from him. He wasn't countering really last night. I noticed he let Garcia kind of back him up to the ropes, and Kaz always been a master kind of boxer puncher kind of thing, very crisp counter puncher, but it didn't seem to be the willingness to kind of draw the guy on and box on the counter was gone. And I thought he looked very, very tired after 6 rounds. So I haven't heard any of the guys' comments because I've just jumped on. I've been away all day, so I'm just interested to see what the rest of the panel think. Is that the kind of general consensus that it was underwhelming, or?
No, we thought that it was okay, but it was a ring rust shedding exercise more or less, and we're looking forward obviously to a better level of opponent next March, and then moving on to maybe fight Selby against Warrington in the summer. We weren't quite as down on it as you were, Rob, although we saw the same sort of fight as you did.
Yeah, I think the thing with Kyle is that it depends now what are the fights left for him out there. He's gone over, he's fought in America, he's won world titles at different weights. He's really looking at kind of big money fights now, and I think that Selby fight kind of needs to happen sooner rather than later before it goes away.
And tell me, Rob, about Conlan. We've come off with all the words, warrior spirit, brave, balls. In the end, Mr. Anquias seems like he's a bit of a talent who can punch, and it was just too much for Jamie.
Well, the thing about fighters like Jamie, when they choose to fight like that, I know Mick mentioned that he's a better boxer than he shows sometimes, but when you choose to fight like that and you're getting into ding-dong battles with guys that are maybe British level or just above or European level, and you're in absolute ding-dong wars, when you come up against a guy who's a top-level operator who can punch, he's going to take you out of there if you have that style, isn't he? So if you're susceptible to getting hit or you fight with your face or anything, you're going to be found out. And the guy punched very hard, obviously, but I think Jamie will come again. It was a tough ask for him there, but he'll probably get another world title shot. He's got a great following there in Belfast as well. I'd like to see him. Obviously, I'd love to see him win a world title. He's a very exciting style, but I don't want to see him taking too many shots either. You know what I mean? So that's the gift and the curse of that style from our point of view. Obviously, it's great entertainment, but from the fighter's point of view, when you can only take so many shots, can't you? So.
Yeah. Anything else from the weekend that excited you, either on that card or otherwise?
No, there's no way I'm watching Ishe Smith or one of the Dirrells in 2017. I think the ship has sailed. I didn't even pick up the results of those. Granted, it was me missus' 30th last night, and I was on the beer heavy, so I have a whopper hangover. I haven't really had a chance to catch up on many fights. Like, but Tommy McCarthy got a very routine win again last night. I think we should get Tommy on someday. Probably I'll get him to come on. But great to see big nights in Belfast, and great to see. I'm a bit disappointed that obviously that I know it was called off a while and we knew about it, but this Garrity and John O'Carroll fight, because I really want to see the rematch of that.
Yeah,
like,
Ozzy was saying that too.
Yeah, the two of them were talking so much, and like, you know, I don't know. I think Jono has taken Garrity's number, even though Garrity on paper is probably the better fighter, like moves better, boxes better. But I think just something about, I think John O'Carroll actually has his number. Like, he's got under his skin, and he showed a bit of power last night in his win as well. So I really want to see that as the chief support on the next kind of big Belfast fight. I actually probably come up and watch that one, and hopefully meet up with some of the panelists. You know what I mean?
Excellent stuff. Stay on the call for as long as you want, Rob. Probably got another half an hour in us, and happy birthday to Mrs. Kelly as well. Right, let's move on. Yep, message from Dave. Yeah, Dave's not too happy about the Durrell fight. Wasn't a great watch. I think I will swerve that one myself. A few questions from the listeners coming in. George Atwell asked a question earlier. He was asking about why is Tyson Fury training up in the Hatton gym and not with Peter Fury. After a bit of digging, my sources have revealed to me, now if this is wrong, hit me up on Twitter, but apparently Tyson is looking to train in the Hatton gym from now on. A guy called Ben Davison, I think he trained Billy Joe Saunders at the time. He was maybe in the corner for the Akavov fight. He's been introduced to Tyson Fury. I think that's Mr. Davison with those noodle things that they all seem to use at the moment. Tyson's doing the pads with him. And apparently Tyson and Peter have had some kind of a falling out, and Tyson's looking to hook up with this Ben Davison for the time being, if and when he returns. Any info on that, Ozzy?
Basically, from what I heard, Peter Fury told Tyson to go and shed a load of weight before you even come near the gym and like start taking it seriously. So at the moment, I think he's just looking to shed some weight. You're correct in saying that Ben Davidson was in the corner for Billy Joe Saunders, Artur Akavov, and the lad's fucking clueless. Some of the shit he was coming out with that night was embarrassing. So for me, if Tyson wants to get back to the level he's at, he needs to be with his uncle. It's the one bloke that seems like he can tame him, particularly when he's in camp, etc., things like that. Or in terms of getting in shape, I wouldn't mind seeing him go into the Ingle gym. They've worked wonders for Billy Joe Saunders. So if you get a Fury eating the right food and things like that, and he'll trim down. It could work out as well.
He's already fit. He's already had trouble with drugs with the British Boxing Board of Control.
Well, yeah, that's true, isn't it? Yeah. But no, that's what I got told. But it's kind of pointless wasting energy on Tyson Fury at the moment until he's in some sort of reasonable shape. He did this last time. He needs to get this mess sorted out with the UCard, the board, get a license back, get a date, and then you can start seeing him as relevant again. At the moment, he's just, as you say, he's hitting the noodles with this lad at the Hatton gym, and I think it's just a case of let's wait and see after Christmas and see what sort of shape he's in then.
I think you're right, dude. I think like after the Klitschko fight, we saw all this from Fury as well. He was coming back. He was calling out AJ. He was losing the weight. He was posting videos of himself in Marbella dieting, and then the wheels fell off it. Like, and he's still probably 5 or 7 stone over where he needs to be. So yeah, the longer this goes on, I really think it's going to be very difficult for him to come back. Like, really, he's going to be out of the ring so long by the time he has. Like, at that level, has it ever been done? Maybe Ali's done it. Like, Tyson wasn't able to do it. Long hiatuses in heavyweight boxing don't spell great news normally. Like, but I'd love to see him back, and I think he's, hands down the best talent wise in the division. But yeah, I think he's we kind of maybe like last week, we got to stop at this stage. Like, he's seen tonight on his Instagram, he's posting a picture of Shannon Briggs, calling out Shannon Briggs. So like, that's where it is at the moment, isn't it?
Frank Warren, though, mentioned that, and he said he's been in contact with Briggs' team to try and arrange that as a comeback fight for Fury. So, I mean, fuck knows why they're looking at someone like old man Shannon Briggs.
I know, like, that was, people were outraged when he was going to fight Hay, weren't they? Like, so.
Wasn't Briggs also recently popped for PEDs?
His ban's up now. I think he's allowed to box next week. But you're right. he was banned for pets.
So just let them fight with no testing then.
Well, yeah, why not? Who knows what you see.
Tyson can do lines of blow, and Shannon Briggs can do steroids, and then we'll see what the fuck happens.
Well, Donny, the thing is, though, I saw this message on Twitter as well about Shannon Briggs, and I thought to myself at first, like you guys, oh, what a complete waste of time. But I would be happy, I suppose, to see Shannon Briggs in the opposite corner. If Fury at least gets rid of a bit of weight and he's in the ring, then let him fight Shannon Briggs as long as he's fighting somebody, because he just doesn't look like he's going to fight anybody at the moment.
Yeah, I was going to say, if it involves Tyson Fury in a boxing ring, I think that's good for fans, and I think that's good for him. As long as, I mean, sometimes, I saw someone in the chat say, well, maybe Tyson Fury doesn't have the motivation or something because he's afraid even if he loses all the weight and puts in all the work in the gym, that they won't give him his license back. That's a crap excuse for two reasons. Number one, Tyson Fury coming back would be worth so much money. The board will find a way to let him fight. Okay, period. And second of all, if he did do that or something, he could always do what Hay and Chisora did and just fight on some like random colors, Luxembourg or something boxing license. I mean, or he can fight in the United States potentially. I mean, he'd find some place to give him a license. Tyson had to fight Lewis in Memphis because it was the only state in the United States without a boxing commission. I mean, if he can get himself in shape to fight, he'll find a place to fight and he'll earn a very good living doing it. And the other thing is, yeah, I mean, he just, it's kind of like the first time I remember I ran a 10K race, right? And what you have to do is sometimes you got to sign up for the race. And that will motivate you to train for the race because you know that if you don't, right, but you have a deadline hanging over your head, it's hard to get up and run and do the running or whatever if there's not a race coming up because there's, you could always put it off till tomorrow. So I think he needs to just get a fight scheduled maybe 6 months from now, schedule it now or 5 months from now or something, and then get his ass in shape or at least semi in shape to make sure he gets in the ring. But unless you have that deadline hanging over your head, I feel like he's just going to be able to continue on in this sort of purgatory and have very little motivation to get things done, and the time's a wasting.
I think Ozzy's bang on as well. I think he needs Peter Fury. Like you've seen him before when Peter Fury not in the corner, like he loses concentration. He got clipped by Steve Cunningham that time. He's vulnerable when Peter Fury is not with him. Peter Fury keeps him focused. Hasn't boxed into a plan always, using his attributes properly. Like so, I wouldn't like to see him with another trainer. I think he needs Peter Fury.
Yep, thoroughly agree, Rob. Right, and we had another question from John Swan. I think I'll hit you with this one, Gabe. You're a notorious troll over on Twitter. John Swan says, do you think that Conor Benn gets too much stick from the hardcores purely because of the stupid, nonsensical and premature things casual fans say about him? He seems genuinely humble to me and appears to have a good attitude and a good work ethic. Do you think maybe the hardcores, the trolls are going for him, Gabe, when the kid himself is just doing the right things?
Possibly. I think it's a lot of times that way whenever we get, see some of the things people put on their Twitter or whatever, social media, what have you, that they believe in a guy that a majority of us that watch tons and tons of boxing don't see, or we, have a differing viewpoint of what we see, So I think, I don't know, to answer the question, I think sometimes I do give him a little bit more shit than he deserves. I mean, if it would be one thing if he was popping off like Amir Khan does, that's one thing. But I don't know from anything. I've never really paid much attention to anything he does outside of the ring. But if he's not spouting off a lot about how he's the best thing ever, then I kind of fail to see why anybody would. I mean, yeah, maybe he's not going to be the greatest of all time, but I do. So I do think that impacts the way that people react to him.
No problem, Gabe. Not a hell of a lot going on next week. On to preview territory already here. Manuel Charles fighting against Alexander Ustinov in Germany. That's a heavyweight fight that I think I shall avoid. Donny, yo.
We're already Twitter questions?
Yeah, we've only got one more Twitter question left, and I'm going to use it in a minute. I'm going on to the previews already, to be honest with you. It's 9:10.
Oh, I'm just I think we're records on here.
Yep. We're going to be out of here in no time, Donny, but keep yourself unmuted because I've got a question for you next Tuesday. It's about Devon Alexander's return. I think old Devon's been having a bit of a rough time with it out of the ring. I know his brother Vaughan Alexander has been fighting, but 26-4, Mr. Alexander up at welterweight. He's fighting on Fox Sports 1 against Walter Castillo, last seen getting knocked out by Sergei Lipinets. Do you think Alexander could be due a good run in the welterweight division? Maybe they'll put him in against a guy just to get a name on the record, perhaps.
Well, I've actually been I've had this circled and starred on my calendar, the return of Devon Alexander. Nothing's more exciting. Probably would miss the birth of a child if I had one, just to see this. I mean, this is going to be epic. What the fuck? No. Yeah, no, I'm sure that he's being matched soft, and also Khan took his soul. Next case.
Donny, that all you got to say?
Yeah, I mean, what's the guy's name that he's fighting again? I didn't even know this fight was coming up.
Walter Castillo. The most exciting thing about this, Donny, is that they're both 26-4.
Well, that's like maybe a good idea to go play those numbers at the lottery or something, But that's all right. That's interesting. I mean, I'll watch it. If it's I like watching boxing on weeknights because it's nice. It's a nice way to relax. I mean, I'm sure I'll watch the fight, and even though I'm making fun of it, I mean, I'm still probably going to watch it. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised to see Alexander lose, though. To be honest with you, he's kind of really. I mean, I'm not even making a joke, but I mean, he hasn't really looked good since he fought Khan, and he didn't look good in that fight even. So yeah, he hasn't looked good in a while. I am excited to see his brother get his career back on track after being in prison for such a long time. He actually looks pretty good. Is he going to be on that card too, Vaughn?
No.
Oh, he's not. Sometimes he fights on his brother's undercard, so I didn't know.
No. On the undercard, the only thing of note, probably of interest to me and nobody else, excuse me, is there's a middleweight called Conor Coyle fighting a guy from Derry. I remember him fighting in the Ulster, I think it was the Ulster Seniors, and I hadn't heard of him since. Well, he's appearing on this undercard, 6-0 against Calvin Metcalf, who is also 6-0, so that should be a pretty decent fight. Good luck to Conor. Right, what else have we got next week? We have, from New York, Sergey Kovalev returning against Vyacheslav Shabranskyy. Rob, the Crusher, has he got anything left? We shall wait and see. Shabransky's a reasonable enough test for him, I suppose. What do you think about Kovalev's return?
Yeah, I'm excited to see. Like, I always liked the Crusher. I just was such a fan of Ward, and I always favoured Ward in the two fights. I thought Ward had his number. But it depends on. I think he's shown signs of fragility mentally over the last 3 or 4 fights. I think in the Chilemba fight, he was showing signs of frustration that he couldn't just blow him away. Like Pascal, he fought a lot of guys who were made for him too. You know what I mean? Like Pascal, an older B-Hop, much smaller. Like he is a devastating puncher. But I think he's been shown now that he doesn't like it to the body. And anybody that's going to fight him now is going to dig to the body, like, aren't they? But you have to be able to be, especially like with Ward, it was just such small margins. Like, he's slipping shots barely, and even at that, Kovalev still dropped him. So he's so dangerous. I heard John David Jackson say that he was drinking in camp, which is a worrying sign. I don't know how focused he is. I don't know how.
Didn't he just
say again? Yeah, he did. But Jackson was saying that he'll never come back because he drinks in camp and he won't take instructions, this, that, and the third. So he's obviously like, there's stories about him behind the scenes, obviously, that he's very difficult to get on with. The guy gives that across in his interviews. It seems to be his persona. So we see how focused he is. I'd say this is a guy he should handle, probably stop him, but. I think he's too big for 175 myself. I think he looked dead. I thought he looked very gaunt at the Ward rematch. Not many people agreed with me, but I think he's too big for 175, and I think he's going to struggle at the weight, especially if he's not preparing right. So that could come and haunt him at some stage. But I'd say for next week, for the next opponent, I'd say he's gonna stop him.
Yeah, you have to wonder how much Kovalev's got left, even at this stage of his career. I don't think he lives the life outside of the ring, as other people have said. I expect him to move up to cruiserweight after the defeat. I don't think his head's there. I think he does what he wants. He doesn't listen to the trainers. John David Jackson has made that clear, that link-up just wasn't working towards the end. Aussie, looking at the titles here, vacant WBO light heavyweight titles on the line. The auspicious International Boxing Association, IBA light heavyweight title, vacant surprisingly, is also on the line. So he'll have that big beauty strapped around his waist on Saturday night. He should win those 2 titles, Aussie. You'd expect him to have too much for Shabranskyy if he has anything at all left, Kovalev.
You would like to think so. I mean, it's a real fall from grace if he doesn't. But as you say, if his head's gone of sort and he's just getting pissed all the time in camp, in and out of camp, and he's not listening to anybody, then people like that, I have no sympathy for them if they do get beat. Put the effort in training, in and out of camp and things like that, then get fucked if you lose. That saying, I do think he'll have too much for him. Like I said, and then it gives him the honour of being another a world champion again. There's a couple of okay fights on the undercard, actually. See, Jason Sosa's, I think he was last time he was out, he was against Lomachenko. See, Gamboa's been drafted in, hasn't he, at last minute now?
That's right, in place of Castellanos, was it, I think?
I mean, he's really had another fall from grace as well, and he's taking fights on like 2 weeks' notice, things like that from what he was a couple of years back. Sullivan Barrera's out again. So it's an okay card, but overall I would suspect, well, in fact, Kovalev will win, and then I wouldn't mind seeing Barrera in with Kovalev. I think that'd be a good fight. Yeah. I think that'd be a really good fight, and one that's winnable for Barrera.
Yeah, that's a guy who can give Kovalev problems. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think it'd be. So hopefully that's why he's on the undercard, to potentially big up a fight between those two early next year.
Does anyone see a way back for Joe Smith at 175 now?
No, I'm surprised they took that Barrera fight. I know we discussed it at the time. I think DiGardia was his manager, and I don't know what you think, Donny, but I think he was badly managed, Smith.
In what way? I might agree with you, but in what way?
I don't know. I think that they could have. You see the likes of Frank Warren, and he gets criticised, but he manages to manoeuvre opportunities for his fighter. And considering Smith had those 2 big wins, I think that they might have been able to manoeuvre an opportunity against an easier fight, possibly even up at world level. I don't know why they took the Barrera fight. I'm glad they did. They had confidence in it, but I didn't ever see him managing to win that fight. And I wonder whether they just got, in the end, they had no more avenues to pursue, and they said, look, we're going to have to just take this fight because we've got nothing else, to do with our fighter here.
His manager is, but wasn't it somebody not too big in the business, to somebody that'd been with him since his first fight or something? I think sometimes what happens is that these guys who aren't very experienced in the boxing game, the ride for the fighter to the top is also like a ride that they're thrilled about too, right? Because maybe they only have a couple of clients, and they start believing that he can do anything. You know what I mean? And a real veteran is going to know that every fighter can get beat on any given night. And so there's nothing more important, than the opponents that you pick for a fighter. And, capitalizing off of those wins. I mean, Bernard Hopkins. I mean, yeah, all right. I know he was old, but, I mean, this is a guy who was beating very, very tough opponents. Hopkins was, that was a very good win for Smith. And then, and then he there was so much to do, and then he did it with the other guy too, the Polish guy, Fonfara, yeah. He knocked him out. I mean, so it's like, you got to take those wins and then capitalize on them and get your fighter paid, so that this way, okay, you get him the title shot. The point isn't just to get the title shot. Anybody can get a title shot if they want to pay for it, but it's to make it so that the title shot pays you. And from what I understand, he didn't even get that much money for the Barrera fight. So it's like you take on like a super dangerous opponent, you miss out on the title shot, and then you get beat, and you don't even put a lot of coin in your pocket as a result. I mean, To me, that was fucking crazy and criminal what his managers did to him. That said, though, does he have a way back? Yeah, he's a big ticket seller in the greater New York area, and people like to watch him fight, and he is in exciting fights. And
Shawnee Monahan was the fight. I think they should have gone for him.
I know. I've been saying that for so long, and then Monahan got beat, and then it takes some of the excitement away. I don't know for the life of me why they didn't make that fight. That's crazy.
They should make it now when they're both coming off their L's. They should make it good.
Yeah.
Monahan's moved up though, hasn't he, to cruiserweight?
It wouldn't be as hot, but you know what? It would still be a fight that I think it would definitely be a big thing in New York. There's a lot of Irish expats down there, and both of them, have strong ties to that community. I think that they should still. Yeah, you're right. Like two guys coming off a loss, one guy is gonna come back from. Yeah, I like that idea. They should still do that. But yeah, I mean, there's a path back for him. I mean, I just don't think, unless maybe a situation came up with there'd maybe be a weak belt holder. I don't see him maybe winning a title, but I think he's still in contention. And the way he can punch so hard, I think that always means you're in contention in any fight. I mean, even in the Barrera fight where he got thoroughly schooled, he still actually knocked down and hurt Barrera pretty badly early in that fight. And if he had been able to capitalize on that, we'd still be talking about him as a huge prospect.
I think it just shows as well. It demonstrates fine margins in boxing, because in the B-Hop fight, B-Hop's 18 months out of the ring, coming off a absolute drubbing against Kovalev, and I think probably if he gets him 18 months earlier, or that version of B-Hop, he probably schools him, right? Oh, yeah. And then in the Barrera fight, they say that didn't Joe Smith pick up an injury after dropping Barrera, and that he couldn't fight with one hand or something for the rest of the fight. So I think it's a pity, because HBO this time last year, or just after the B-Hop knockout, was closer to Christmas probably, they were gushing about him. Kellerman, Lampley, like they were, breakout fighter of the year. And then to go and get beaten then by Barrera in his next defense, like it was madness, like absolute madness. And he's one of those guys that could have made a lot of money off, like, you know what I mean? The kind of great white hope with a 175 division. Like, he doesn't talk much. He talks like a simpleton and punches like an atomic mule. Like, so I don't know. I think they dropped the ball on him, and I hope he finds a way back, because 75 needs those kind of fights now that Ward's gone down.
And I wanted to also, too, just while we're still on the light heavyweights, I don't think I got to say anything about Kovalev, but so let me just get it straight. Does anyone know who's his new trainer now?
Kovalev. Last I heard, he was training himself. I have no idea.
Oh, really? Okay, yeah, I have to find out. But it is interesting that you were mentioning that, because I was thinking of three specific things. The first one is that, and nobody ever talks about this, in fact, literally, but Abel Sanchez, literally, when he's asked about it, won't ever talk about why him and Kovalev split. I don't know what the hell went on there, but like definitely something went on. And you always say, he's like, oh, it just wasn't, he's like, I don't feel comfortable talking about it or whatever. The way that he answers the questions implies that there was something there.
He's definitely intimated that there was a lack of ability for Kovalev to follow instructions. I've heard him say that before, but you're right. He gets very secretive, like almost like something, like there was an incident almost. It's like he's alluding to that, like.
Yeah, it's like there's definitely something he's hiding. I don't know what it is. And Kovalev obviously won't talk about it either. So there's that. Then you've got John David Jackson saying this stuff about him, and and this I thought was actually really appropriate, but I know Don Turner is getting up there. But I mean, after the rematch with Ward, he said, well, he's like, well, what do you expect or whatever? He's like, Kovalev's not a boxer, he's just a puncher. And it's like, first of all, that's not even true. I mean, Kovalev does a lot of things in there that are, and he's not just a puncher. I mean, he exhibits quite a bit of skill in there, in my opinion. And also too, he beat Ward in that first fight. I don't care what anybody says. I mean, I know he's not in the official scorebooks, but I had him winning that fight. I had it about even with the point for the knockdown, and I think most people did have it that way. So I mean, really, and then he's got the other loss to Ward, and to be fair, the initial shots that hurt him, okay, and he was hurt, but the shots that finished him were definitely in the balls. That's just undisputed. I mean, you can't watch.
He wanted out. He wanted out. He quit.
He may have, and I think he was. I think what happened was, I think the referees robbed Kovalev of. I'm sorry, they robbed Ward of what would have been a perfectly clean knockout victory. Okay, but to be fair, he did get hit in the balls multiple times in the finishing shots. I mean, in other words, I think that if that fight was allowed to go on, Ward would have finished him.
Absolutely.
But the referee ruined it, right?
But,
so the only person that was harmed by that was Ward because it created controversy. But if you really think about it, you really got, like, he beat Andre Ward 2 fights ago, and in his last fight, it ended under bad circumstances, whatever. If that's Kovalev training while he's drunk, then what a monster this guy would be.
Well, he's got a good point there, Rob, I suppose.
Yeah, but the thing about Kovalev is that he's such a classic villain, like that he has so many kind of like variables like to his personality. Like, what was that in the first fight where they bring in some Russian guy that nobody's ever heard of to give the instructions for the second half of the fight, and it just so happens that Ward takes over in the second half of the fight and he can't do anything about it. And the first fight and the second fight continued like the second half of the first fight. Like, it's bizarre. Like, what was he thinking? Like, and then he brings Jackson back and is publicly criticized. Like, he's got so many kind of bizarro aspects to his personality. I wonder will he ever get focused to be, because he should really, once Ward is not there, be the dominant force at 175. He should beat all of them. He should beat Battle Jack. He should beat everyone. Like, if he's focused, because we've seen what he can do. But is he going to be like?
Well, trainer update. Apparently, Kovalev has hired Abro Tursun Polatov to be his new trainer. And in case you're not familiar with him, Donny, because you were asking, according to ESPN.com, Tursun Polatov's most noteworthy fighter, other than Kovalev, is junior welterweight prospect Fazlidin Goyebnazarov, who won a 2016 Olympic gold medal, as you will know, for Uzbekistan. So Tursun Polatov has been brought in, not Don Turner, Donny.
Wow. Okay, well, if you believe in anything about communication and whether or not people can take instruction, I would imagine that this individual would be able to give him instruction in his native language, so that's a plus. Maybe Kovalev wasn't following instructions because he didn't understand. He doesn't have that excuse anymore.
Well, Makech makes a good point on Twitter. He says, John David Jackson said that Kovalev drinks in camp, but he also said that Arias was prepared to die in the ring against Jacobs. Lol. Good point from Makech there. Right, Gabe, let's get you in. We've talked a lot about Sullivan Barrera. A couple of fights ago, Sullivan Barrera was knocking out Vyacheslav Shabranskyy in an excellent fight in 2016. Shabranskyy has had 2 wins since, and now he's fighting Kovalev on Saturday night. How do you see this fight going down, Gabe, Kovalev against Shabranskyy?
I think Kovalev will win. I don't see any reason to think he won't. I mean, unless he just has completely fallen off the mat, which is, I don't think he has, because he'll still have at least the power and the knowledge that he's had previously. I mean, it would surprise me if Shabranskyy beat him. I just don't see him bringing anything that's going to deter Kovalev enough so that he'll be able to outpoint him or knock him out. I don't know. I mean, he could go to the body enough, I suppose. I just don't think it's going to happen, though. He's not as skilled as Ward is, and for him to be able to work the body, he'd need to up his game a little bit defensively to take into account the power of Kovalev, which came out with a great plan, great execution, and so we know that it's not impossible at this point for Kovalev to be beaten. So, I mean, it's a possibility, but I just don't see it happening.
And Gabe, any interest in the undercard fights? We have Jason Souza against late replacement Yuriorkis Gamboa, and Sullivan Barrera, the aforementioned Cuban, who is going in against Felix Valera. Valera's 15-1. His only loss is to Dmitry Bivol. But it's pretty decent fights on the undercard there, actually.
Yeah, I think so. I think, I was a pretty big Gamboa fan. Whenever we marinated for, 2 years before we got waiting for the Juan Manuel Lopez fight.
Yeah.
And even if you aren't necessarily a fan of Gamboa, I don't think you can deny the fact that he usually is in pretty good fights. I mean, earlier in his career, he had moments where he would fight down to the level of whomever it was he was facing. And so it wasn't always pretty, but he scored a lot of knockouts, was flashy, looked good. And then even in his recent fights, it's still fun to watch because you don't know what you're going to get from him. So are you going to ever see that, younger Gamboa, or are you going to get this older one that has a potential to put on a good fight or get knocked out? And then Barrera, I mean, I think his recent fights speak well enough for him to say that could be a pretty exciting fight too. So yeah, the whole undercard is good. The whole card top to bottom is good. This is one that I like all the way through and through. So yeah, I mean, I don't have any negatives to say about the card.
No negatives from Gabe, right? Bellew of the week, so I'm going to close us out. Just before we do, one final Twitter question. I'm going to come to you on this one, Donny. It could be a bit of a tough one. Ben Thorne sent it in to me on Facebook Messenger earlier, and we were having a little bit of a back and forth trying to think of answers. Ben says, with the likelihood, hopefully, of an AJ versus Fury fight, can anyone recall a time that a slugger won against a boxer? I'm struggling. So I suppose it depends on your definition of slugger. Donny, he's including Fury. Fury and AJ as the slugger versus boxer here. I'm thinking going back to the days of Rocky Marciano, I suppose, against Ezard Charles and Jersey Joe Walcott. I've only seen limited footage on YouTube of those fights. More recently, I was thinking of Nigel Benn. He was definitely a slugger early on in his career. He obviously varied his style a bit later, but against Iran Barkley, can you think of any when the slugger has come out on top against the boxer?
Prescott versus Khan.
Straight off the bat, Donny.
That's a great one.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much. I mean, the only reason why I think this makes this question difficult is that there are some fighters that you're hesitant to call a slugger because if you're a real boxing nerd like we are, you realize that sometimes come forward pressure fighters I think the average casual fan would call fucking Julio Cesar Chavez a slugger because they don't realize what he's doing in there and
yeah,
how you defend yourself in close quarters and actually play very good defense when you're in tight. So I think that we'd be hesitant to call somebody a slugger, or if we did just call him a slugger, it might look like an ignorant statement. But I think ultimately the answer to the question is pick a boxer who just got knocked out by somebody, maybe in a fight that they were winning. I think that happens frequently enough. I don't know how many examples I need to give.
Donny, you've given enough examples, and I thank you for that.
What are some other ones? Well, all right, yeah, fine, good.
We'll go on to Bellew of the Weeks. If anybody has any they want to throw in on Twitter, then hit us up. What's your Twitter again, Donny?
At Donny Asylum Pod.
Go for at Donny Asylum Pod if we can think of any examples of sluggers defeating boxers. Let's get on with the Bellew of the Weeks and get out of here, guys. It's 25-10. We're doing well. Some of the regulars aren't with us, unfortunately, but we have the boys on anyway. Right, Boxing UK and Ireland has been nominated. He says, is it true if Eddie Hearn was promoting the Rigo versus Lomachenko fight, it would be fight of the year? Rigo, you need to sign with Matchroom. Shocking this isn't getting the promotion it deserves. You deserve a great payday, Rigo. And to top it off, Boxing UK and Ireland tagged in the Eddie Hearn parody account as if it wasn't bad enough already. Boxing Britain has nominated Deontay Wilder. Don't take what's unique about a fighter away. Even the greatest had a Wilder side. Okay, fair enough. Neil Ryan has nominated Steve Bunce. He was talking about unbeaten professional boxers. Buncey's had a bit of a nightmare lately. He was having to go at people on the BoxRec forums the other week, and he was looking for names and addresses. I think he wanted to beat up a few people. So Buncey hasn't been having a great time of it. Yeah, if you want to fight him, Donny.
Wait, so this is a Bellew of the Week in itself. So you're saying that Bunce went on internet boxing forums and started challenging people to fight?
This was on a week that you weren't on. This is not what he's getting nominated for this week, but apparently someone on the BoxRec forum was saying don't buy Buncey's book, boycott his new book. And Buncey was having a back and forward, and then he went onto Twitter and he said, does anybody have contact details and addresses for the following posters on the BoxRec forum? And then he named the little pseudonyms. Yeah, man. Buncey's ready. There's a few nominations for Buncey, actually. I think he was on rare form last night on BT Sports.
One of the ones where he talks
Like
about...
people are scared of Steve Bunce.
Yeah, that one's fucking great. I can't wait till we get to that one.
Norman Shreve has nominated Andy West. Andy West says, Eddie Hearn is the man and needs to be respected. Before Eddie came along, boxing was dying. He rejuvenated the sport, and to that I take my hat off. Eddie, thanks again and keep up the good work. I salute you, sir. He got 12 likes as well for that, so must be doing something right, I suppose. Moving on, Dal Singh has nominated Oscar for Bellew of the Week. Oscar De La Hoya has called out Conor McGregor. He's talking a return. Be funny if Oscar got the fight and Paulie Malignaggi didn't anyway. I think Malignaggi's still going on, by the way, if anyone's wondering. Jamaica has nominated Billy Joe Saunders. He even took a screenshot in case it's deleted. Billy Joe Saunders tweeted out randomly, females with smelly fannies should be executed. So, following up from his flange nomination last week, Billy Joe's on rare form. Congratulations to him. This is a good one. Quite a few people have pushed this forward. Will Vickers, why boxing is booming in Britain, and he went on a whole big rant about Frank Warren, about Eddie Hearn, and then he wrote a version of the national anthem which gave praise to Anthony Joshua, I think, and the whole thing was just completely bizarre. Apparently he's a serial offender. He was asking about Evander Holyfield, why is he considered an all-time great when he has like 10 losses or whatever it is on his record and all these different things. Will Vickers, look him up on Twitter, he's quite the character. Tommy Roosh has nominated John Keenan. John Keenan was talking about Liam Smith after the Liam Williams fight. Liam is a rhythm fighter. If he finds it, he can beat Charlo. John? No, he can't. Right, moving on to the next one. Oh, the Goon. The Goon got involved as well. Liam Smith has improved a lot since then, since the Canelo fight. He outboxes Charlo and Lara, in my opinion. Lara is too small. Liam Smith outboxes Charlo and Lara, Rob.
You wouldn't touch Lara. You wouldn't touch him. None about.
Ridiculous. Ben Thorms has nominated, who's he nominated? Daniel Egan, I think it is, on Facebook. Johnny Clash has nominated Mike Moraz. Moraz says Conor would embarrass Oscar. If Conor can do well against Floyd, unlike most professional boxers, he'll finish Oscar early. I have a feeling we might see that fight, I hope not, but stranger things have happened.
You know what? Something actually tells me it's not as far-fetched as you think.
I can see it.
The reason why I can see it is because apparently McGregor's having problems with Dana White, and that's why he's not going back into the octagon or whatever. So as long as he's having contractual problems, he can go maybe fight in the boxing ring. I don't know.
Yeah, Oscar's got the itch. He wants to get back in. Brian King, as always, a serial nominator, thanks to Brian. Adam Abramovich was talking about Rigo, talking about his ring generalship and saying his defence isn't great. And Jay Machine says, this is a hot take if I have not ever heard one. I have yet to see Rigo have a glove landed on him more than once in a fight. He's been knocked down a few times, so he must have had a glove landed on him. Mohamed Mia has nominated Ellie Setback. He showed a picture of himself with Adrian Broner. At Adrian Broner, one of the best pound-for-pound fighters in boxing, says Ellie. All right, then. Stephen Pritchard has nominated Joe Gallagher on the Toe to Toe podcast. He said that Stephen Smith is fighting Vargas at Mandela Bay instead of Mandalay Bay. That's a good one. Joe Kelly has nominated Ben Dendith. Ben says, Conor Benn looks like a proper wrecking machine in this photo. I reckon this will have to be one for the man cave. I don't think anybody wants to end up in Ben's man cave. Goodness knows what else is in there. Probably like that guy out of Alan Partridge who has all the pictures of him on the wall. Danny Young has nominated Talk Sport. I used to listen to Talk Sport years ago. I can't stand it now. I can't stand this crap, says Danny. Talk Sport says, at their peaks, who would have come out on top? Who would have Anthony Joshua had the best chance of beating out of these heavyweight legends? Mike Tyson, Lennox Lewis, Holyfield, or Muhammad Ali? And then they ran a poll. Oh dear. Alex Fuge has been nominated, in fact. He was asking people in the streets of Thailand if they'd heard of Deontay Wilder. Wilder has no street cred in Phuket. Hashtag unify, hashtag stay humble. Taking off Eddie, I think he was asking people in the streets of New York. Someone's texting me, go away. Martin Hurry has nominated Eddie Chambers. This is the most bizarre thing. I wasn't really following on this, but apparently Eddie Chambers and Anthony Joshua having some kind of Instagram DM back and forward, and it got a bit militant, and Joshua was saying certain things, and Chambers has said, I'm glad you're being exposed for who you really are. Where was you when I was with Furies, the clown? I'm motivated, said Eddie Chambers. Get yourself demotivated. I don't want to see you fighting anybody, thank you. Norman Shreve's nominated the Talk Sport Drive. My God, how many more of these bloody things have I got left? who have we got here? Simon Alevy has nominated apparently Deontay Wilder had to go to Spencer Fearon. This is something that I could get on board. Spencer Fearon knows fuck all about boxing, says Deontay Wilder. Deontay, I'm a fan of yours now. Ricky Gravel has nominated whoever wrote the book about Lucas Brown. The World Champion That Never Was, it's called. This is the Lucas Brown book, if anyone wants to get hold of it. Michael Montero is talking about the TalkSport Drive. He's been nominated. He said, my money is on Lennox Lewis being the one that Anthony Joshua beats and Tyson would get bludgeoned and stopped. I think he's trolling there, to be honest with you. What else have we got? Let's have a look. Joseph Parker. He was saying he wants to fight against Anthony Joshua. Fight a voluntary or pay me a respectable 40% as a fellow champion and let's unify. And Antares of Thrace got involved and he said, your social media following is at least 90% lower than Eddie Hearn's. Have a word with yourself, Joseph. Still got more of these frigging things. MTK Global has been nominated. IFL, Declan Garrity has been nominated. Callum McKenna has nominated Bunsey. Apparently he was talking about the previous Carl Frampton opponent. I think it was Gonzalez who knocked him down in Texas that time. He was telling the story how he was found dead and naked in the back of a car in a drug-related death. Cracking bit of punditry there. And Andy has nominated Joseph Parker for saying he would knock out Joshua and Wilder. And finally, Will Vickers has been nominated yet again. Oh, and Matt Skelton has nominated Bunsey for saying that Paddy Barnes fought like the best Cuban fighter you have ever seen, mixed in with a 1950s American Philly fighter. That's a great quote from Bunsey on his podcast. Sorry about that, everybody. I had about friggin' 55 or something in the other nominations.
Well, Steve, wait, can you just go back to the Bunsey one? What did he say exactly about what was the guy that fought Frampton?
It was Gonzalez. He was the guy who knocked Frampton down twice in Texas. He ended up getting murdered, as you know, and apparently Bunsey decided to relay this story in all its graphic detail on the BT Sport commentary last night. I was at the fight, so I obviously didn't hear it.
While trying to make a point on Carl Frampton's defense, he suddenly launches into this story about the guy as if it has any relevance to why Carl Frampton was getting hit. Like, what an ass. And I tell you what, I'll give you my address, Bunsey. What are you going to do? Nothing.
Yeah, but I mean, like, you know, it was like talking about like irrelevant. Like, I mean, all right, it's terrible that the man got murdered. Now, I don't know if he was naked in the back of a van when he got murdered. I don't know if maybe they murdered him and then threw his naked body in the back of a van to dispose of it or whatever. But how in the world, like Rob just said, is that relevant to like why Carl Frampton is getting hit? I don't understand.
Bunsey doesn't deal with things like relevance. He doesn't worry about that.
The current opponent that he's facing in Garcia. Well, he seems to be doing well, and that's pretty good considering the fact that he had a bad case of gonorrhea last month. I mean, like, you know, like, what? Just basically a totally irrelevant, you know, personal detail of somebody's life that like doesn't even need to be shared, and especially since the guy's dead. You know, I mean, you don't want to speak ill of the dead. But it was just a case of him just saying, "I'm trying to fill time right now. I don't even know what the hell. I'm just gonna just share random information that has absolutely no relevance whatsoever."
To be fair, Garcia did do well considering that gonorrhea, though, Donna.
Yeah, he did. You know, the drip is a bit. Yeah.
Since we've been on the air about half an hour ago when I started the Value of the Weeks, Toby Hines has thrown one in. Amir Khan, apparently he's on this jungle thing. He said he's called himself a former Olympic champion. # silver is second, says Toby Hines. Bit of factual information there. Go ahead, Rob.
I think he deserves a special mention. I know he was mentioned last week, but like what kind of a way has his career panned out? Like last time we see him sprawled out on the floor against Canelo, moving up in an unwinnable fight, in my opinion, just because it was in Vegas and it was pay-per-view. Bad business, in my opinion. Like he didn't need to get another knockout. Like, just fight Brook. Like it couldn't be any more. Like I'm no Brook fan, but it couldn't be any more obvious that he doesn't want the Brook fight. Like I think he knows Brook has his number and he can knock him out. And he can take a knockout to Canelo, but he can't take a knockout to Brook. That's my feeling on it. Like, who would go into the celebrity jungle with the dregs of celebrity? Is that what he wants? Like, he seems to want to be a big star. I'm a big star in America. I'm a big star in Britain. Well, you're going to be a big star now with Lee from Steps or whoever is in there this week. Like, you know what I mean? What an absolute disappointment for me, anyway. For a guy who had a degree of talent and always vulnerable, always in exciting enough fights, like, where has his career gone?
Lee from Steps. nomination for Amir Khan then as well, I think, from Rob. Right, Donny, who are you going for this week? I'm going for Will Vickers.
Wait, and I was between him and the other one that I was talking about. What was Vickers again? What did he say?
He's the guy who was coming off with all the nonsense and making up like national anthems with Anthony Joshua in and all that type of stuff.
Yeah, the only thing is though, I can't bear to nominate like yet another Joshua casual for like that value of the week. I'm gonna have to go with Bunsey for this week. Actually, not even just for the thing about sharing the random detail about how his Carl Frampton's former opponent was found naked in the back of a van, murdered. I'm going to go for that, but also for the multiple other offenses.
Yeah, he also threatened people on Twitter, and he also compared Paddy Barnes to a mix between a Cuban and a 1950s Philly fighter.
And stalking people who shit on his book on random internet forums.
Exactly. Right, Gabe, who are you going for this week?
Bunsey.
Bunsey for Gabe. Ozzy?
Will Vickers, definitely.
Well, we've got 2 for Bunsey, 2 for Will Vickers. Rob, what about you?
Gotta be Bunsey. Send him the address. Gotta be Bunsey. Like what the greatest Cuban we ever seen? Come on.
Okay, then it's Bunsey. Well done, Bunsey. You might not be selling too many books, but at least you've won the Bellew of the week. Thanks to everybody who's been on this week. No hate to Dave and Smido, self-confessed casuals, apparently. Tommy's on his way back from Belfast as we speak, and Andy is feeling not well, so he hasn't joined us. Hopefully, those guys will be back next week. Thank you to everyone who's jumped on. Rob Kelly, Ozzy Smith, Gabe Lewis, and Donny Baseball. I've been Steve Wellings. We'll catch you all again next week. Thanks for listening, guys. Bye.